Yeah. So hello, a very good afternoon to everyone, and to all the lovely ladies. I wish a very happy International Women's Day, and my very special thanks to Dr. Anita Kumari for the very kind invitation. And your words are really inspiring and encouraging, I think not only to the women but also to everyone who is listening around. Actually, the gender bias is known to be there in the science also. So I think initiatives like this will help to encourage and inspire the people, especially the women. And I want to thank especially to Dr. Nihad for organizing it. So I really sincerely appreciate her efforts to bring out a very different topic like neuroscience to a plant biology audience. Actually, I was asked to give a bilingual lecture. I'm Palakattan, so I know Malayalam well, but I don't know if my scientific explanations in Malayalam may not be so accurate. If that is the case, please excuse me, but I'll try my very best to convince you on the topic of why Alzheimer's disease is prevalent in the females. So this work which I'm going to present is done by a group of neuroscientists from the National University of Singapore and the Nanyang Technological University from Singapore, where I belong to. So coming to Alzheimer's. So when you hear about the Alzheimer's, so everyone knows that it's a brain disorder. It's a neurological disorder which causes the brain to shrink and it causes the brain cells to die. So the key symptom, so when you know that you have an Alzheimer's, the key symptom is memory loss. So Maravi ennadana Alzheimer's in a key symptom. So you start to identify it when you have problems like you won't be able to get back to your home. വീട്ടിലേക്കുള്ള വഴി മറക്കുക. അത് നമ്മൾ ഒരിക്കലും മറക്കാത്ത വഴികളാണ്. So വീട്ടിലേക്കുള്ള വഴി മറക്കുക and getting lost at places which are very familiar to you. And then trouble handling money, trouble in paying bills. For example, instead of giving a 100 rupee, you give like 500 rupees. And you just forgot to get the change. And then you repeat the questions. Like once you ask, and then you forget that you really have asked this question. So repeating these questions, and you take a longer time to complete like normal daily task. So normally to complete your normal course, so if you take like 3 hours, an Alzheimer's patient would normally take double the time. And then the personality and the behavioral changes. For example, nammalloru kadayil poyi. So for example, normally what we do is, we and then we pay and then go. So even in the but they forget that you need to pay before you exit the shop. So these are all like personality and behavioral changes which are associated with this. So memory loss is something which happens throughout aging, but it becomes visible only when it interferes with your day-to-day life activities. So as when people get older, you forget a lot of things like, you forget your glasses, which I do every day, and then they lose mobile phones, keys, etc. So if you look at the statistics of Alzheimer's worldwide, so nearly like 44 million people have Alzheimer's or a related dementia. So dementia means it's an umbrella term. It's a term which is given to all kinds of memory loss. And Alzheimer's comes under this umbrella. So it's a kind of dementia. And it's separated depending upon the, the pathology, and many other factors. And the unfortunate thing is only 1 in 4 people with Alzheimer's have been diagnosed. And the main reason is that as forgetfulness is a normal part of aging, so as we get older, the changes occur in all parts of the body, including the brain. So the brain is also getting older. So as a result, the people notice that, you take time to do things. So that is one reason why, it's difficult to diagnose Alzheimer's at an early age. And then the global cost of Alzheimer's and dementia is estimated to be like $605 billion. And the most important part which we are going to focus today is the fact that 1 in 6 women are at the risk of developing Alzheimer's after 65 years old compared to 1 in men. That means, there is the risk for having Alzheimer's is more in women than the men after 65 years old. Then, I came across a very interesting paper which says that the incidence and prevalence rate of Alzheimer's in Kerala across a 10-year period is relatively higher than that which is reported from the rural parts of the northern part of India. So we will see why you see more Alzheimer's in certain regions. So coming to the next slide. So here I'll show you the geographical variations in the rates of dementia. So this mostly indicates that a rural living is associated with increased risk of Alzheimer's. So because the people who live in the cities tends to be like more stressed, but it has a positive effect also. And then the geographic variation also can indicate the importance of the socio-environmental and the economic contributions that gives to the dementia etiology. For example, if you look very carefully into these graphs, into the map, you can see that the high incidence rate of dementia, which is represented by this red color, is seen mostly in the developed nations. For example, the Australia. So here you can see the Iran, Iraq, then all the European countries, then South Africa, then North America, then Brazil and Argentina. So this is because the human life expectancy is more in these countries. So they have a better health care, they have a better hygiene, they have a healthier lifestyle, then they have nutritious and sufficient food, and they have improved medical care, and they have reduced child mortality rate. That means you expect to live much longer than our ancestors did. So you have a much more elderly population. So as Alzheimer's is an age-associated disease, it's very natural that as you get older, and if there is like more number of aged people, so you tend to have like more AD patients naturally. So, but the very interesting fact is that if you look at India, it's still gray. That means the number is very low, but it does not mean that the number of the AD patients are very low in India. It's because of its inability to diagnose the number of the patients. So it's known that at least a fraction of an estimated 5 million Indians with dementia and Alzheimer's are diagnosed. So this calls the need for awareness in the society. So other than the socio-economic factors, so there are a good lot of other factors that contributes to the incidence and prevalence of Alzheimer's. For example, if you look here, Finland has the highest rate of Alzheimer's in the world. So this is because the climate in Finland is very cold and humid. So what happens is it results in the housing facility, and it harbors a lot of molds that are capable of producing a neurotoxin called as mycotoxin. So what mycotoxin does is it reduces the neuroprotective effect of various compounds. And this, in addition with the mercury, the low selenium levels in the Finnish waters add to it. So these kind of climatic contributions can also lead to increased Alzheimer's in certain geographical areas apart from the socio-economic conditions. So now coming to the Alzheimer's. So when you hear about the Alzheimer's, so the main clinical manifestation, so the main thing is ormakoravu. That is the main clinical manifestation. It means the cognitive dysfunctions, memory loss, like abnormal changes in the personality. The pathological changes, I think you might have learned in the school that there might be like lots of neurofibrillary tangles, amyloid beta plaques, and phosphorylated tau. So I won't go in deeper into the scientific parts. So here in our studies, so we say that Alzheimer's is rather a synaptic failure because so you see these memory deficits at an older age. Although people say that Alzheimer's is an age-associated disease, the symptoms of the Alzheimer's is evident even 10 or 20 years before the pathological or the clinical manifestations happen. So once you see the memory loss, actually all these kind of pathology has taken place 20 years before. So initially what happens is synaptic failure is the initial thing that happens. So if we can detect some biomarkers that can detect the synaptic failures, it's very easy to detect it. So at least we can slow down the progression of the disease. So there is no cure for Alzheimer's. So the only way to reduce it is to slow down the progression of the disease. So let me tell you why Alzheimer's disease is a synaptic failure. So let me tell what is a synapse. So here you can see this is a human brain. So you know that the fundamental unit of brain is a neuron. So in the human brain there are like billions of neurons. So like 86 billion neurons are there. So and these neurons are connected by synapses. So here you can see this is a synaptic connection. So synaptic connection means it's a space where two neurons communicate. So the electrical signals through which the neurons communicate, or the chemical signals, they pass from one neuron to another through these synaptic connections. But nammalore memory undakumbo. So when you are learning something, now you are listening to me. So when you are learning something, what happens is these synaptic connections are strengthened, okay, or new synaptic connections like these are formed. So when you make a memory, either synaptic connections are strengthened or new synaptic connections are formed. Similarly, when you are forgetting something, what happens is these synaptic connections weakens, or you lose some of these synaptic connections. So if you ask, so now people will think that if there is more synaptic connections and less weakening of the synapse, if you have less forgetting, what will happen? But let me tell you, forgetting and making memories are equally important. It's like a homeostasis which needs to be maintained. For example, in some of the autistic patients, what you see is you don't see this forgetting part. There is no weakening of the synapse. So there is only strengthening of the synapse. And moreover, let me tell you like another condition where what happens when you do not forget. So hyperthermicia. So this is a condition where, so this condition only like 60 people in the whole world has this hyperthermicia. So what is interesting is that these people, they don't forget anything. So they have an autobiographic memory. So that means, so if I ask you, so what did you had like in 2010 on a Monday morning, like January 10 Monday morning, what did you eat? So these people will tell you in series what has happened, okay? But the bad thing is, so they are like bombarded with memory, and the price they have to pay is, so they are prone to getting lost in remembering. Normally, you get lost in something and you forget. But these people are like, they get prone to getting lost in remembering. And then their creative part is totally bad. For example, if I'm telling him what is the capital of India, so it's New Delhi. So actually they will not remember the fact that New Delhi is the capital of India, but rather they remember what I wore. Okay, I've worn a purple shirt, so I've worn these glasses, so I have this hairstyle. So they look at all the other details of the situation rather than the fact which we have told. So what I'm trying to emphasize is, so this strengthening of the synapses is important as the weakening of the synapses also. So now I'm going to test how good is your memory, and what is the risk of having an Alzheimer's for all of you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a list of words, and please try to memorize it, okay? And later I'll have like some questions for you. So get ready. So thread, pin, eye, injection, syringe, sew, sharp, arm, point, pain, haystack, hand, stitch, doctor, knit. Okay, now I'm going to erase all these. So now I'm going to divert you with a different set of questions. So what is 5 times 5? Okay, I can't hear anyone. So what is 4 times 25? Then what is 7 times 5? Then what is 10 times 7? Okay, now, so now your task is, I'll give you a list of words. You need to tell me if the words were on the list which I showed you before. So if it were on the list, you just show me a thumbs up. If not, just show me a thumbs down. So sharp, was it there in the list? Okay, good. Thread, was it there? Okay. Syringe, okay. Needle, up or down? Okay, now let me tell you what the error is. Okay, now you can see sharp is there, the thread is there, syringe is there, so the error is needle. Okay, don't worry if you have made the mistake. At least you know you could associate needle, because all these are something which the doctors use. So you could associate something with that. So when I was showing this, so you were forming a memory. So this formation of memory is done by a region in the brain called as hippocampus. So നമ്മുടെ ബ്രെയിനിലെ hippocampus എന്ന് പറയുന്ന organ ആണ്. When you are learning something, you are making your memory using this organ. So I can show you, so this is a brain, and this, so this blue part is the hippocampus. So it's a horseshoe shaped structure, and it resembles the seahorse, the animal, the sea animal, the seahorse, so that's why it's called as a hippocampus. The good thing is, this is the organ where which is important for formation of the new memories, and it has a very major role in learning and memory. And this is a region which is vulnerable to many of the neurological and psychiatric disorders. So when you have Alzheimer's, so this is the organ which is first affected by the Alzheimer's. Okay, so now I'll tell you how people study the functions of certain brain areas. So if you want to know the function of the hippocampus, you have to take it out. Then only you will know how the hippocampus functions. So I'll tell you the story of a very famous patient. So this is the patient who is the best single known patient in the history of the neuroscience, whose brain is like very extensively studied. So as a child, actually there was a bike accident and he fell down, and then he developed an epilepsy. So as he aged, the epilepsy became like very severe, and then it interfered with his daily activities. So his mother took him to a doctor. So in order to get rid of the epilepsy, so what the doctor did a surgery to remove like most parts of the hippocampus. So doctor hippocampus in the most part of the, so we have two hippocampus, one on the right and one on the left. So he removed most parts of the hippocampus. So after the surgery, the patient became a very new personality. Although half of his seizures disappeared, he wasn't able to make a single memory. When the doctor comes and introduces, okay, I'm Scoville, every time he enters a room, he needs to introduce himself. And if after he eats, he doesn't know he has eaten it, although he feels full. So this is a condition. So he cannot make any new memories. So hippocampus is a region which makes memories. So after the consolidation, hippocampus, it transfers the memories to cortex. So he still retains all the memories that are present in the cortex. So he remembers all the childhood things which were done like long before the surgery. The surgery ki മുമ്പുണ്ടായിരുന്ന കാര്യം, ഒരുപാട് മുമ്പുണ്ടായിരുന്ന കാര്യങ്ങൾ he remembers, but he is not able to make any new memories. So I think I could convince you what is the role of hippocampus. So പുതിയതായിട്ട് നമ്മൾ എന്ത് learn ചെയ്യുന്നോ, so we are unable to do it. So this is what happens in Alzheimer's also. So now let me show you what happens when you are learning something. Okay. So this graph, so the y-axis shows the memory in strength. Okay, memory etra undu ennalladana y-axis la, and the x-axis is the time. സോ നമ്മൾ ഒരാളെ കാണുമ്പോൾ ഫസ്റ്റ് സംഭവിക്കേണ്ടത് യു ഹാവ് ടു എൻകോഡ് ദ മെമ്മറി. സോ നമ്മളൊരു അപ്പോൾ ഒരു കുട്ടിയുടെ പേര് ചോദിച്ചു, ഓക്കെ ലീസ. സോ ഫസ്റ്റ് I have to encode the name Lisa into my brain, and then I have to associate the name Lisa to the face also. So this is the encoding process. The next stage is you need to store the information. Okay, it has to be in the brain. So if you look at the red line, so either it just it decays. Sometimes you don't remember everyone you meet. But നമ്മുടെ പല മെമ്മറികളും നമുക്ക് ഡീക്കേ ചെയ്തു പോകും. ഓക്കെ, പക്ഷെ വേറെ പല മെമ്മറികളും കൺസോളിഡേറ്റ് എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഒരുപാട് കാലം നമുക്ക് മെമ്മറി പെർസിസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യും. ആൻഡ് ദെൻ ദ ഫൈനൽ തിങ് ഈസ് റിട്രൈവൽ. സോ നമ്മളൊരു എക്സാം എഴുതാൻ പോയാൽ ഇഫ് യു കാണ്ട് റൈറ്റ് ആൻഡ് യു നോ എവറിത്തിങ് ബട്ട് യു കാണ്ട് റൈറ്റ്, ദറ്റ് മീൻസ് യു ആർ നോട്ട് ഏബിൾ ടു റിട്രൈവ് ദോസ് മെമ്മറീസ്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ എല്ലാ സ്റ്റേജുകളും നടന്നാലേ നമ്മളൊരു മെമ്മറി സക്സസ്ഫുൾ ആണെന്ന് പറയുള്ളൂ. സോ യു നീഡ് ടു എൻകോഡ് ഇറ്റ്, സോ യു നീഡ് ടു സ്റ്റോർ ഇറ്റ്, and you need to consolidate it, and you need to retrieve it. അപ്പം നമുക്കൊരു ഓർമ്മക്കുറവ് വരുമ്പോൾ when you have a memory loss, ഇതിൽ ഏതൊക്കെ സ്റ്റേജിലാണ് ഇത് സംഭവിക്കണമെന്ന് അറിയില്ല. So when you see a person after like 6 months, if you can't remember her name or face, it can either be due to you didn't encode it, ആ പേര് നമ്മൾ എൻകോഡ് ചെയ്തില്ല, or you didn't store it, or you couldn't consolidate it, or you couldn't retrieve it. നമ്മൾ പറയും നമ്മുടെ നാക്കിൻ്റെ തുമ്പത്ത് വന്നു, but I really can't say it. This is you know it, but you really can't retrieve it. So all these have like different biological process. So when we study like Alzheimer's disease in the animal models, we study which part of the process is affected. Is it the encoding? Is it the storage? Is it the consolidation? Or is it the retrieval? So now coming to the core of the study, so the question is there a sex differences in the brain? So ഈ മെയിലിൻ്റെയും ഫീമെയിലിൻ്റെയും ബ്രെയിന് വ്യത്യാസമുള്ളതാണോ എന്നുള്ളത് since ages it's a very controversial topic. So some people say that it's different, some people say that it's not different. I'll try to convince you both. So there are two schools of thought. So first I'm going to explain you one school of thought which says that the male and the female brains are different, and I'm sure you will be convinced. So the first thing is the male brain is 10% larger than the female brain. It's known since ages. But then it's not linear. നമ്മളുടെ ബ്രെയിൻ്റെ വലിപ്പം കൂടിയാൽ it's not related to intelligence. അങ്ങനെയാണെങ്കിൽ ആനയ്ക്കും വെയിലിനും ഒക്കെ കൂടുതൽ ബുദ്ധി ഉണ്ടാവണം, but they are not. So a larger brain doesn't relates to higher intelligence, okay? And then a female brain is hardwired for empathy. Empathy എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ it's a drive to understand other people's emotion. ബാക്കിയുള്ളവരുടെ ഇമോഷനെ അണ്ടർസ്റ്റാൻഡ് ചെയ്യുക. I think it's very typical of the woman. പക്ഷെ മെന്നിന് they are more hardwired for understanding and building the systems. So whenever they see something, they try to understand, they try to analyze, they try to explore, they try to extract the underlying rules governing the working of a system. For example, വീട്ടിൽ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു സ്വിച്ച് കേട് വന്നാൽ the first person to go and repair would be the men in the family. And then women value more reciprocal relations. എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ നമ്മൾ ബാക്കിയുള്ളവർ എന്ത് വിചാരിക്കും എന്ന് ചിന്തിക്കുന്നതാണ് women. But men are like they value more for power, politics and competition. Sorry, this is not my opinion. Okay. So and then the next fact is, so when you listen something, women use it. So നമ്മുടെ right brain and left brain, it has different functions. So men while listening to something they use only the left part of the brain, but women listens using both sides of the brain. But left part എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ it's more for language and analytical. പക്ഷെ right side എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ creative and emotions also. So women പറഞ്ഞാൽ when they talk, actually they combine the creativity, they combine the logic into the language. But the men are more like, they talk, but their analytic part is higher. And then the most importantly, women are more likely to develop depression, Alzheimer's disease, then multiple sclerosis, stroke, etc. This is very well known. And then while men are more likely to develop alcohol dependence, Parkinson's disease, the antisocial personality disorder, autism. So now let me show you the second school of thought, which is like it's a completely different thought, okay? And this is led by a neuroscientist named Gina Rippon, who wrote the book The Gendered Brain, the neuroscience that shatters the myth of female brain, okay? So what she explains is the brain development is shaped by the role of experiences and the biology of the brain, okay? It's not that, so she put forward this idea that there is no male and female brain. So every brain is different from other brain. So for example, you know, normally people tend to say, oru veettil oru aankuttiyum penkuttiyum undengil, we say that, oh, ende aankutti valare penkuttiyil ninnum vyathyasamaanu. But this is wrong. Ask people who have two girls. Avaru parayum, my two girls are very different. If you ask two boys also, the two boys are very different. So you know, every individual, so every brain is different from every other brain. So according to her, the sex differences in the brain are bound to happen, but it is only for the biological processes, for the reproductive processes. So it's rather a biological variable than a gender bias. So actually when we use the word sex differences and gender differences, these are two different terms, you know, but people uses it as common. So sex means it's either male or female. It's more biological. But gender is a societal term. It's something, you know, we have termed it. So he's more like a man, she's more like a woman. So gender is more biased. But the sex differences means, you know, it's a biological term. So what this group of people try to show is, if you look at the brain volume, so the later people started to look at brain volume in relation to your body size. So, you know, the tall people have like, you know, the bigger people tend to have like bigger brain. So if you look at that ratio, women have a bigger brain than men, okay? And then if you look at this systemizing, empathizing brain, you say that, you know, men are more good at skills. But trust me, if you ask a lady to drive a car, actually she will learn the skill in time. So when you learn something, actually your neural system is changing to adapt it. And then, you know, once you're interested, then it increases. So, you know, she becomes as good as, you know, everyone else. So you can't just say that, you know, this work can be done by men or this work can be done by women. So in earlier times, people used to say that, you know, like in Three Idiots movie, when a male is born, they just decide that, okay, he's going to be an engineer. So from that age onwards, the parents train them to become an engineer. And then he becomes good. You know, so it's the training. So we call it as epigenetics. I'm sure you know the word epigenetics. So genetics and epigenetics are two different terms. Okay, genetics is like, it's the biological makeup of an individual. So what you inherit. But epigenetic is like nurture. Okay, what the environment and behavior teaches you. So it's how the physical world influences the nature. So this is epigenetic. So during the early childhood, if a child is like, if she's too much stressed, then her total neural network is like designed for that. So she tends to have like depression and a lot of neurological disorders later in the ages. So early life influences like environmental influence, you know, your diet, exposure to pollution, everything can impact, you know, your future brain. So epigenetics is very important. So what this group tried to say that is the gendered brain is created by a gendered society. For example, you know, you just assign that the blue is for men and the pink is for women. So then, you know, the men doesn't want to wear the pink because it's stereotypical. They think that this is a woman's color. Okay, so this kind of stereotype is generated ever since they started to, you know, mingle with their friends. So the brain is like, the brain is like a sponge. It absorbs everything. So it's more a function of experiences rather than what it has. So and then all these happens because of a very special ability of the brain called as synaptic plasticity. So plastic എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ നമുക്ക് ഏത് രീതിയിലും മോൾഡ് ചെയ്തെടുക്കാവുന്ന ഒരു സാധനമാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഈ ടേം synaptic plasticity എന്ന് യൂസ് ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്നത്. Because our synapses can be molded to any ways. So if you wanted to make somebody an engineer, you can mold them to be an engineer. So if somebody is not destined to. Everyone can be molded to something else. So the ability of the brain to mold from birth, so until the old age, actually your synapses, the synaptic connections change until you become old. So you can keep on learning. This is called as continual learning. So it's because of this special ability of brain called synaptic plasticity, all these changes happens. So now let me tell you what are the risk factors for developing Alzheimer's. So one is the family history, which you cannot change. And then the age and gender also you can change. But the things which you can change are the environmental toxins, then injuries, the lifestyle. Lifestyle is the most important factor, reduce the risk. And then do the brain exercises. And low education level is one of the very high risk factor for AD. Then other factors like blood pressure, high cholesterol, etc. So the focus of the study is like why women develops more risk. So 1 in 6 in women compared to 1 in 11. But women 1 out of 6 പേരിൽ ഒരാൾക്ക് അൾസൈമേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ടാവും, ബാക്കി മെന്നിൽ 11 ഒരാൾക്കേ ഉണ്ടാവുള്ളൂ. So let us see why it is so. So this can be due to various reasons. ഒരെണ്ണം വെച്ചാൽ genetic. So നമ്മൾക്ക് ഒരുപാട് ജീൻസ് ഉണ്ട് which make you predisposed to Alzheimer's. For example, ApoE gene. So the women who carries this ApoE gene are at very high risk for developing AD than the age-matched men. So if you have any questions, actually you're free to raise your hands or ask it in between, okay? So apart from the genetic, the hormonal things are another factor, because you know that until the menopause, estrogen gives you a lot of neuroprotection. So what happens is the decrease in the estrogen, endogenous estrogen during the menopause, it's a trigger for developing Alzheimer's. And then there are structural changes, then immune functions also. So for my study, what I have looked at is the sexual dimorphism in the synaptic plasticity, as I explained. How we study is, we use animal models. So we use mice models. So എന്തുകൊണ്ടാണ് mice model ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്നതെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ they are very similar to humans. പിന്നെ നമുക്കുണ്ടാവുന്ന എല്ലാ അസുഖങ്ങളും അവർക്കും ഉണ്ടാവും. And then most importantly, they can be genetically manipulated to mimic all human diseases. It's like you can knock out a gene, you can knock in a gene, so it can mimic all the human diseases or conditions. So we use a mice model. But എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഇത് സ്റ്റഡി ചെയ്യുന്നതെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ if you look at this graph, so this is like, so we use a water maze for the mice. So this is like ഇതൊരു WT എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ വൈൽഡ് ടൈപ്പ് എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ നോർമലായ പീപ്പിൾ ഒരു സ്ഥലം കണ്ടുപിടിക്കാനായിട്ട് they took only a little bit of time. But you see, this is the Alzheimer's mouse model. So ഈ APP-PS1 എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ AD mice. So it took a long time to find the way. Okay, so we use a lot of behavioral procedures to see which behavior is impaired. So and then we also use the plasticity studies, as I mentioned. So if you look at this graph carefully, so this black arrow, so we are using the cellular model. So what we do is we give electrical signals. So these electrical signals are like a learning thing. So this black arrow is like a learning thing. For example, if I ask you, what did you eat for dinner yesterday? ഇന്നലെ രാത്രി എന്താണ് ഭക്ഷണം കഴിച്ചതെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ I'm sure you all remember it. So if you remember it, then it just potentiates. And then ഇന്നലെ എന്താ കഴിച്ചതെന്ന് ഞാൻ ഇന്നലെ കഴിച്ചത് ഒരു 4 ദിവസം കഴിഞ്ഞ് ചോദിച്ചാൽ I don't think you will remember it. So അപ്പോൾ ആ മെമ്മറി ഡീക്കേ ചെയ്ത് പോകുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ this line comes down. But if I ask you what is your marriage date or when did you join the institute, so these are all like very important dates for you which you will never forget. ഈ ലേണിംഗ് എല്ലാം നമ്മളുടെ അടുത്ത് ഒരുപാട് കാലം ഉണ്ടാവുന്നതാണ്. So that will stay for longer. Okay, this is the concept of LTP, which I will tell you in detail. So for all our studies, we use the mice brain. So this is a mice brain. So what we do is we take the hippocampus. ഇതിൽ നിന്നും hippocampus എടുത്തു മാറ്റും. And then, so what you see here is like transections of the hippocampus, which is like 400 micrometer thick. And then we put electrodes. Electrodes, 3 electrodes hippocampus located. What we do is, we stimulate it with using electrical signals. And then we record the signals from the brain slices. And the beauty of the experiment is, animal experiment. But this is an artificial brain system. So we have an artificial brain system which mimics the brain. So you keep the hippocampal slices alive for almost like 14 hours. Okay. So this is how the chamber looks like. So we put all the electrodes into the brain slices and the brain slices are alive. Now let me show you. So this is like a schematic representation. Okay. So this is hippocampus in the section. These arrows, these are the electrodes which we put in. These electrodes are just stainless steel electrodes. Okay, and then, so for example, just consider a green or a group of neurons. So we stimulate it and we record the signals. So the brain record the signals this field EPSP and population spike record. Okay, record the signal. Let me show you. This stimulus, for example, just imagine this white arrow is like a learning event. Okay, this learning event is similar to the electrical stimulus which we give. So we give an electrical stimulus. It's like a learning event. So all these parts are like the cellular parts of memory. So memory engane ee animals slice study cheyyanu chodichal it would be very surprising. So I'm trying to explain you how do we do it. So this white arrow is like a learning event. So this is like, for example, I'm asking you, what did you eat yesterday for your dinner? So, you still have that memory. That's why, it potentiated. But if I ask you like 3 days later, you will forget it. A forgetting part, it's coming down. That means our memory fade. Okay, they no longer remember it after that. So we call it a short-term memory or early LTP. I'll use the word LTP more frequently. So LTP means, just a correlate of memory. Early means it comes down sooner. But you see, if you give like 4 arrows, that is similar to a long-term memory. It's like I ask you, like, when is your wedding day? This is a memory, this is a strong memory. Okay, the wedding is like strong memory. And then you see, look at the blue line, it stays on for longer time. So it's called as a long-term memory. So late LTP means late. It stays for a longer time. Early means it comes down very early. So this is a correlate. So why we use it is because they have a lot of similarities, biological, phasic similarities. You know that memory has many different phases. Like there are some memories which stays only for some time. ചില മെമ്മറികൾ നമുക്ക് കുറച്ച് നേരം കൊണ്ട് പോകും, ചില മെമ്മറികൾ ഒരുപാട് കാലം ഉണ്ടാവും, ചില മെമ്മറികൾ ഒരു ലൈഫ് ടൈം എക്സ്പീരിയൻസസ് ആയിരിക്കും. So I'm going into more scientific details, but I'll try to explain it simply. So ഇതൊക്കെ 3 different ആയ stimulus patterns ആണ്. ഈ ഓരോ പാറ്റേണും it's equal to a kind of learning paradigm. So ചില സമയത്ത് we give a strong electrical stimulus which is equal to a strong memory. Okay, and we don't need to give a strong stimulus to evoke a memory like paradigm. For example, നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ ഒരു ന്യൂ പ്ലേസിൽ പോയാൽ നമ്മുടെ ബ്രെയിൻ ഏത് ഫ്രീക്വൻസിയിലുള്ള വേവ്സ് ആണോ ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്നത് അതിനെയാണ് തീറ്റ വേവ്സ് എന്ന് പറയുക. അപ്പോൾ ആ തീറ്റ വേവ്സ് ഉപയോഗിച്ച് സ്റ്റിമുലേറ്റ് ചെയ്താലും വി ക്യാൻ ക്രിയേറ്റ് എ മെമ്മറി ലൈക്ക് LTP. ആൻഡ് ദെൻ മൂന്നാമത്തേന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ പെയർ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ഫോർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ നിങ്ങളിപ്പോൾ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഒരു കൊളീഗ് ഏത് കളറിലുള്ള ഡ്രസ്സാണ് കഴിഞ്ഞ തേഴ്സ്ഡേ ഇട്ടുകൊണ്ടെന്ന് ചോദിച്ചാൽ ഐ ഡോണ്ട് തിങ്ക് യു റിമെമ്പർ ഇറ്റ്. ബട്ട് ഇഫ് യു വിറ്റ്നസ് ആൻ ആക്സിഡൻറ്റ് then you tend to remember everything related to it. നമ്മളത് ഒരു ആക്സിഡൻറ്റ് നമ്മൾ പറയുമ്പോൾ I saw a girl in the green dress and there was a man in a blue shirt. So you tend to remember all these irrelevant information. അതൊന്നും നമുക്ക് normally it wasn't relevant. But when you pair it with the accident എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ it's a strong memory. So when you connect it with accident, ഈ irrelevant ആയ എല്ലാ മെമ്മറിയും നമുക്ക് relevant ആയി മാറും. അങ്ങനെയാണ് നമ്മൾ പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് കഷ്ടമുള്ള സാധനങ്ങൾ പഠിക്കാൻ കിട്ടുന്നില്ലെങ്കിൽ യു അസോസിയേറ്റ് ഇറ്റ് വിത്ത് സംതിങ് ആൻഡ് ദെൻ യു മേക്ക് ഇറ്റ് ഈസിയർ. ഓക്കെ, അതാണ് ഈ മൂന്നാമത്തെ സംഭവത്തിൽ നിന്ന് മൂന്നാമത്തെ PSTDP-യിൽ നിന്നും കിട്ടുന്നത്. So now, so these are the experiments, okay. So ഈ ബ്ലൂ കാണുന്നതെല്ലാം മെയിൽ അനിമൽസ് എന്നുള്ളതാണ്, പിങ്ക് കാണുന്നതെല്ലാം ഫീമെയിൽ അനിമൽസ് എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ മുകളിൽ കാണുന്ന ഫിഗർ ബിയിൽ കാണുന്നത്, അപ്പോൾ ഈ എക്സ് ആക്സിസിൽ ഇഫ് യു ക്യാൻ അണ്ടർസ്റ്റാൻഡ് ദീസ് ആർ ഓൾ ദ സിഗ്നൽസ് ആൻഡ് ദ വൈ ആക്സിസ് ഈസ് ദ സിഗ്നൽ ആൻഡ് ദ എക്സ് ആക്സിസ് ഈസ് ദ ടൈം. സോ ഈ സ്ട്രോങ് സ്റ്റിമുലസ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഇറ്റ്സ് എ മെമ്മറി, ഇറ്റ്സ് എ ലേണിംഗ് ഇവൻറ്റ്. അപ്പോൾ ഈ യു ക്യാൻ സീ വൈൽഡ് ടൈപ്പ് എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ നോർമലായ മൈസിൽ ഇഫ് യു ഗിവ് എ ലേണിംഗ് ഇവൻറ്റ് യു സീ അത് താഴെ വന്നിട്ടില്ല, ഇറ്റ് സ്റ്റേസ് അപ്പ്. ഓക്കെ, ദറ്റ് മീൻസ് ദ മെമ്മറി ഇറ്റ് ക്യാൻ കൺസോളിഡേറ്റ് ദ മെമ്മറി. അതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഇതാണ് ഫീമെയിൽ വൈൽഡ് ടൈപ്പ്. ദിസ് ഇസ് ഫീമെയിൽ വൈൽഡ് ടൈപ്പിലും ഇറ്റ്സ് ദ സെയിം. വെൻ യു ഗിവ് എ സ്ട്രോങ് സ്റ്റിമുലസ് it persists. That means the memory is long lasting in both of them. But you look at the figure D. This is an Alzheimer's, this is from a male Alzheimer's brain. So the memory is formed, പക്ഷെ അത് decay ചെയ്യും കുറച്ച് നേരം കഴിയുമ്പോഴേക്കും. Okay, so that means they have only a short term memory. But you see here in figure E, it's very surprising that the females, it comes down very faster. So അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഫീമെയിൽസിൽ നോട്ട് ഓൺലി ദ റിസ്ക് ഈസ് ഹയർ, ഒരു മെമ്മറി ഡീകെ ഫീമെയിൽസിൽ ഉണ്ടാവുന്നത് വളരെ ഡ്രാസ്റ്റിക് ആണ്. മെയിലിന് ഇപ്പോൾ ഒരു മെയിലും ഫീമെയിലും ഒരേ സമയത്ത് അൾസൈമേഴ്സ് ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഫീമെയിൽസിൽ ഉണ്ടാകുന്ന മെമ്മറി ലോസ് ഓവർ ടൈം ഇസ് മോർ ദാൻ ദാറ്റ് ഓഫ് ദ മെയിൽസ്. So now we did similar kind of experiments with all the different paradigms and we have got the similar kind of results. You see blue moolata wild type, and then right side it's the female, they both stay up. താഴെ കാണുന്ന രണ്ടും അൾസൈമേഴ്സ് ആണ്, both came down, but if you look carefully, E is the female one, the decay is quite faster. And then estrous cycle, so there are a lot of studies which shows that in different estrous cycles the memory is different. So we just studied what happens at different estrous cycle, but at different estrous cycle there is no change in the memory compared to the others. ഇനി കാണിക്കാം എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഇതിൻ്റെ ബിഹേവിയർ ഞങ്ങൾ സ്റ്റഡി ചെയ്യണമെന്ന്. സോ ദിസ് ഈസ് എ ചേംബർ. ആക്ച്വലി യു ക്യാൻ ഡു 4 എക്സ്പെരിമെൻറ്റ്സ്, 4 എക്സ്പെരിമെൻറ്റുകൾ ചെയ്യാം ഇതിൽ. അപ്പോൾ ഐ ഷോ യു ഓൺലി ലൈക്ക് വൺ ഓഫ് ദെം. സോ വാട്ട് വി ഡു ഈസ്, ഇവിടെ കാണാം ദർ ഈസ് എ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം ഹിയർ. ഓക്കെ, സോ മൈസിനെ നമ്മൾ ഈ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിൽ എടുത്ത് വയ്ക്കും. സോ താഴെ ഒരു അയേൺ ഗ്രിഡ് ഉണ്ട്. ഓക്കെ, സോ മൈസിനെ ഇവിടെ വെച്ച് കഴിയുമ്പോൾ സോ നോർമലി ദ മൈസ് ഹാസ് എ ടെൻഡൻസി ടു ജമ്പ് ഇൻ ആൻഡ് ദെൻ so as soon as the mice jumps we give a mild foot shock. Okay, I'll show you how it. So pa mice avada vechittunde. So all the rodents, ella mice inum they have a tendency to jump down. Okay, so as soon as it jumps down it gets the foot shock. Adondana adu immediately jumped back to the platform. So ഇതാണ് ഒരു ട്രെയിനിങ് പ്രോസസ്സ്. സോ വാട്ട് വി ഡു ഈസ്, സോ വി ഗിവ് ദിസ് ട്രെയിനിങ്. സോ ദ മൈസ് ഹാസ് ടു ലേൺ ദാറ്റ് ഇഫ് യു ജമ്പ്, താഴെ ജമ്പ് ചെയ്താൽ ഇറ്റ് വിൽ ഗെറ്റ് എ ഫുഡ് ഷോക്ക്. സോ അതൊരു പെയിൻ ലേണിംഗ് ആണ്. സോ ഇറ്റ് നീഡ്സ് ടു നോ ദാറ്റ് ഐ ഷുഡ് നോട്ട് ജമ്പ്, ഐ ബെറ്റർ സ്റ്റേ അറ്റ് ദ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം. സോ ഈ ലേണിംഗ് ആണ് മൈസിനെ ട്രെയിൻ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ആൻഡ് വി ഡു അറ്റ് ഡിഫറെൻറ്റ് ഇൻ്റർവൽസ്, ലൈക്ക് 1 hour നമ്മൾ ടെസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്ത് നോക്കും. അപ്പോൾ if the mice remembers it will just stay in the platform, it won't jump into the grid. പക്ഷേ അൾസൈമേഴ്സ് മൈസ് എന്ത് ചെയ്യുന്നു വെച്ചാൽ it doesn't remembers, so it straight away jumps into the platform. So this is how we use different paradigms to see how the animal learns something. So for our experiments actually we got the results like females they show a higher decline in the memory when compared to the males. And these are all like very pure scientific things. So what we saw is there was an activation of the neuroinflammatory genes and downregulation of the plasticity related genes. So I won't go into major details. So and then when we did the immunolabeling, what we found is there is more A beta plaques in the females, and there is no more microglia in the females hippocampus compared to the males. And so this is a conclusion from all I have shown. And finally, I need to thank a few people. So this is Sridharan Sajikumar, so he's among the audience. And this is Toheen from NTU, and this is George Augustine. And I need to thank my colleagues Maria, Aisha, Ria, and Isong, who all contributed to the paper. And then I need to thank MOE Tier 3, which is a grant which support us. And finally, again, thanks for your very kind attention. And wish you again a happy Women's Day. So if you have any questions, you are free to ask.
Dr. Shrija, I have one question, Dr. Shrija.
Yes, yes.
That I understand that you have removed the hippocampus of both the groups of the mice.
Yeah.
Then how come one group is having Alzheimer's?
No. This is like we separate. So we have 4 groups of animals. Okay. So one is Alzheimer's male, one is Alzheimer's female, the another is wild type males, wild type females. All these experiments are done different. These are all different experiments. So in every graph you saw like four graphs, right? So each one is from one group. So for every single experiment we need to work out from these 4 groups of animals. So we isolate a hippocampus from all these 4 groups of animals and we do experiments separately.
One more question, because based on your experiments, because I think it is only one activity or one thing to remember.
Okay, actually we have done like multiple paradigms, but I haven't showed it here because then it becomes like too scientific. So we did like quite a lot of paradigms, So every paradigm is different in its own terms. So one is like a strong tetanus to induce a strong memory, and another is a different form, Every kind of stimulus which you give is different. So we have used multiple paradigms for that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and sparing your valuable time with us. Dr. Shrija, Senior Research Fellow, Nyantang Technological University, Singapore, is the author of the path-breaking finding revealing the relationship between Alzheimer's disease and female brain. Her findings are published in reputed journals, Aging Cell, and Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences of the USA during this current year, 2022. She is the recipient of many prestigious awards like Lee Wadsworth Award during 2022, 2015, and she has been selected to attend the Lindo Nobel Laureate meeting during 2011, awardee of Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship for PDF and lot more. We take this opportunity to wholeheartedly congratulate you and wish you to continue with valuable research output for